A lot of times I'm in the room and you guys are asking me questions, and it makes it easier for me to maybe come up with some story I could tell you. But I will tell you this, no matter what I do or no matter what I say, anything I say or tell you, you guys could Google it, you could look it up, you could talk to people, and you will find that it is 100% true. I'm not going to make up nothing. Unlike someone else that's on Pal Talk that will lie to you and tell you false stories or make up stuff because he has no idea what he's talking about. I won't do that. I promise you. If you guys have a question or anything, I'm not going to tell you I was there. I'm not going to tell you I wasn't there. Whatever I tell you is true. It's a fact. And, there's a lot of people in the room right now, Ontario, Doug, and Mike, and, obviously Jesse, and Barbie, and Kayla, and Friend, and Ian, and Elvis. So, it's a lot of people in here, and you guys all stood in here and stayed for the whole time. Free etch sketches. What? That was made from some place in Ohio, actually. What's that, Ohio Art or something? Made that, actually. They made a lot of money on that. I can do this each and every night, that I'm on there, that I talk to you guys, or get on mic and tell you stories and stuff. Okay, I'll give you a quick story, real quick. Okay, you guys, you realize Elvis bought a lot of cars. Elvis liked this car called the Stutz Blackhawk. And actually, if you guys see the last picture of Elvis that was taken, Elvis was coming into Graceland. He was pulling up to the gates of Graceland. And if you look on, Google or whatever, and you put last picture of Elvis, you're going to see that he's in the car with Ginger Alden, and he was wearing like a karate kind of jumpsuit type thing. I believe it's blue in color with white stripes on the side. And Elvis pulls up the gates of Graceland, and he waves at the people taking pictures. But yes, exactly. He's coming from the dentist. He had to get a cavity filled, and the dentist had gave him some painkillers, and he was getting ready to go on tour because they were going to go to Portland the next day. After that, they were going to go to Portland the next day after that, which was the 17th. He was going to start playing Portland. On the 17th, he was starting a new concert tour. But this was on the very early evening of the 16th. I mean, we're talking from the 15th to the 16th. He went to the dentist. He's pulling up the Graceland. Pulls in, goes up to the house. And then, I've told the rest of that story. But what I was getting at is the car he was driving. It was a Stutz Blackhawk. Now, earlier, before that all took place, he had seen the car, and it was a handmade car from overseas. He liked it a lot. He thought it was a cool car. And anything that was cool, Elvis liked. So they were starting production of making these cars, and they're going to bring them over to the United States. Elvis caught wind of it. He's like, I'm going to get the first car that they got. Unfortunately for Elvis, Frank Sinatra had already made dibs on the first car. And he had already said, I'm going to pay X amount of dollars for the car. So Elvis was like, darn it, Frank's got the first one. I wanted the first one. And Elvis wasn't selfish, but, he also had an ego to some extent. This is a car he likes. And he found out just now that Frank Sinatra has dibs on the first one. So he calls up the manufacturer, and he asks, well, how much did Frank pay for the car? A little different world back then. Nowadays they'd say it doesn't matter, we already sold it. But back then, they got Elvis on the phone, and pretty much Elvis could do whatever he wants. So they, well, he gave us this much for the car. And Elvis says, well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you this much for the car as long as I get the first one. So they're like, well, that's a lot more than Frank paid, so I'll tell you what, I will give you the first car. Imagine that. It's just like he bought Graceland. You know, when he bought Graceland, the YMCA in Memphis had said, well, we'll pay you X amount of dollars for Graceland, which was like $40,000. And at the time, Elvis owned a house in Memphis. And he sold that house for $40,000, ironically. And he said, well, I'll tell you what. The YMCA is going to give you $40,000 for Graceland Mansion and 13 acres. I will give you $100,000 for it because I want the house. So Memphis goes, you know, people selling it. They go, okay, it's sold. It's yours. It's all yours, man. So he paid He took $40,000 he got from the sale of his house in Memphis, and he paid the rest in cash and proceeds and whatever else he put together, and then paid the balance of $100,000 for Graceland, and he bought it. So you know, that's what I'm getting at is if Elvis wanted something, money was no option. If you paid $100,000, he was going to pay $300,000. It didn't matter. It was his. He was going to get it. So, just, you know, to kind of, you know, Frank Sinatra and Elvis, they had this like, you got to remember, Frank Sinatra, he had his own mafia. Elvis had the Memphis Mafia, Frank had his mafia. You know, but they were both big stars, you know. Elvis was huge and Frank was huge, and I'm not going to minimize Frank because I like Frank Sinatra too. And Elvis wouldn't either because Elvis respected Frank Sinatra. And it was mutual. You know, but the bottom line was Elvis, like anybody, you know, you think you got the car, I'm going to get the car. You know, there was, you know, a little bit of the competition back and forth. You know, you had the chairman of the board, you had the king of rock and roll. You know, they're going at each other. So it was a friendly competition, so to speak. So anyways, Elvis got the first one. Bottom line, when it came in, he got it. And then Frank got the second one, and Elvis got the third one. Elvis wanted to buy the third one. He wanted to make a point. Okay, I got the first one. You got the second one. Guess what, chump? I'm getting the third one. So he bought the third one, Stutz Black Eye. Unfortunately, Elvis let one of his people drive it, and they wrecked one of the Blackhawks. But, you know, he still had it after that. You know, the next one. He had the other one. So it was okay. That's why you bought two, in case one gets wrecked. Anyways, but, you know, that's what he did. So, you know, I just thought I'd say that because it was kind of cool how he did that. And the funny thing is, this story that I'm just telling you was told to me personally by Elvis Presley himself. That's where I heard this story for the first time. Vernon's brother told me this story. And I thought it was as funny as you guys do right now. And that's, at the moment, and when he told me that story, that's when I said, man, I thought he was cool, but I really think he's cool now. You guys know of Happy Days, and I'm a big fan of Happy Days, the TV show, back in the day. You guys know the Fonz, you know, Arthur Fonzarelli, the coolest guy, you know, the guy's cooler than cool. Look it up, because it is really cool. You know, there's a lot of references to Elvis in Happy Days, you know, but the Fonz, you know, being the coolest guy around, you know, they were talking about, you know, Richie, I think Richie asked him, Fonzie, you know, you're the coolest, but I want to ask you a question. Who, you know, other than yourself, who do you consider cool? And he goes, well, you know, James Dean's cool. And Richie goes, yeah, James Dean is cool. And he says, but who's cool as you? He goes, well, yeah, Richie, nobody's as cool as me. But Elvis, he's pretty darn close. Now Elvis is cool. So in the show they actually reference Elvis, and then Arthur Fonzarelli actually admits that Elvis might just be quite almost as cool as he is. So anyways, guys, I'm gonna close up the room with that. And like I said before, as many times as you guys want. And if you guys ask me something completely off the wall different, I can go off on a whole nother level, though. So there's all kinds of stories, and 99% of it you guys haven't heard from me. It's just a matter of, you know, what you ask and what I remember. So anyways, I'm going to let it go at that. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you. And as I said, thank you to Ontario Doug, Mike P., thank you so much. Elvis, Aaron Presley, Jesse, thank you. Kahela, I appreciate you being here. Barbie and your mother, Angel friend Ian Delvis, and I did appreciate Mrs. Delvis being here too. Thank you, Barbie. And Little Bit Angel, as always, the greatest admin on Pow Talk and a wonderful singer, the greatest female Elvis singer on Pow Talk, without a doubt. We're going to close up the room. We will be back tomorrow night. Same time, same place. Good night, everybody.